official. So we've got a really good panel today that will get going at expectations of a head coach. And I'm the AD at University of Albany, been here for 6 years. Was at Old Dominion University for almost 20 prior to that. So a little bit about me. I'm going to turn it over to our panel for introduction. We'll start with Mike Capacio to let him give a brief background.
Thank you, Mark. Mike Capacio. I've been the athletic director here at the Citadel for 2 years. Was vice president for development for 6 years before that at the Citadel. Have a coaching background and came from the fundraising role really into senior administration. Been an athletic director at 2 Division I schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Tim Duncan from University of New Orleans.
Hey everyone, I'm Tim Duncan, University of New Orleans. Good morning. What's up, Benson?
Hey.
I've been athletic director here for a year. I was athletic director at 2 Division II universities for 7 years, and I came up through fundraising in Memphis and UNC Wilmington. And prior to that, I worked in corporate at Russell Athletic and RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company on the Winston brand during the Winston Cup. So that's a little interesting fact about me, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. And I should have introduced you as the original Tim Duncan.
Thank you. You're absolutely right.
Got it. Shawn Helberman from Stony Brook.
Hey everyone, Shawn Heilbron, Director of Athletics at Stony Brook. Been here 6 years now. Formerly with SMU, UCLA, Oregon State, came up through marketing, fundraising, and just excited to be here and get a chance to get to know some of you.
Thanks, Shawn. Next, we have Chris King from Robert Morris.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everybody. Chris King, Robert Morris, just finished my first year. This past Monday was my 1-year anniversary. It's my 11th year as an athletic director. I was spent the previous 10 years at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, formerly University of Texas Pan American. And I've worked at other institutions such as Alabama, University of Central Florida, and Liberty University throughout my career. And so been in the business about 26 years. Excited about being here and look forward to helping out any way I can with this esteemed panel.
Thank you, Chris. And Michelle Meadows from Longwood University.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everyone. Excited to be with you. I'm the athletic director at Longwood University. I just finished my first year. I've been here 15 years. I had the privilege to start my career at VCU under Doc Sander, and most of my career was through the internal operations side of things, and I had the privilege of working for another panelist you'll see later today, Troy Austin, for 13 years. Gave me incredible opportunities to move up, and excited to be in this role and excited to be with you today.
Great, thanks, Michelle. And Martin Newton was scheduled to be with us today, but like so many of us in the COVID-19 world, he got pulled into a all day long off-campus planning session. So he sends his regrets. So let's jump into this topic. I'm going to turn to Shawn Heilbron first. And Shawn, talk about your expectations of the head coach and maybe the CEO mentality.
Yeah, I think it's really important that, today especially, the role of head men's women's basketball coach, your status is much more than coach. You're a figurehead, you're a high profile member of the department, and in many ways the face of the department. So I think the mentality of being a CEO is really, really important. And I really think that means your relationship with the athletic director, with the president, is really, really important, because you're managing not just a basketball team, but really the image of the university in many ways. So that is from who you recruit, how you recruit, the culture of your program. In many ways, you set the tone for other head coaches in the department. People are watching your lead. So are you someone that blows off all staff meetings because it's not a priority to you? People notice those things. And I think it's important that you set the tone in how you conduct yourself, how you manage up, how you treat your student athletes, because other coaches are watching. And again, so much of what we do is incumbent upon our basketball program success on and off the court. So the mentality of being a CEO and really conducting yourself at even a higher standard is really important. And it's something that us as athletic directors, we expect. And that is an important asset that you can bring to the role of head coach, just managing like you are a CEO.
I appreciate those comments. And you mentioned managing up and communication with your AD. And I'd be curious to hear from others on the panel to just dig in a little bit deeper on that. Maybe we could hear from Tim Duncan on that.
Mark, yeah, communication is key. I talk to my coaches all the time. We text, we talk on everything from scheduling to recruiting to just checking on each other's day. And it's very important to have a great relationship. And here, my situation is a little different because none of the sports report to me. They all report out to my executive team. So I think that does give me a chance to build different types of relationships with them, though, instead of having the kind of formal reporting line. So it allows me to build relationships with them and figure how I can take them to the next percentage. But communication is extremely important, and as CEOs, for them to communicate up to me and even with our president on occasion is a critical part of their job.
Thanks. And we all have different communication styles and management styles, as you just referenced about how the reporting lines. Would be curious to hear from a few other ADs about what style of communication do they prefer? Is it in person as much as possible, text, email? Maybe we could hear from Michelle on that.
Thanks, Mark. I like diversity of communication. I have formal meetings with my coaches, but also very informal, whether it's text, calls, walking upstairs, checking in, see how folks are doing. I agree with what Tim and everyone shared so far. I also think about, in addition to managing up, managing across is really important. We're a smaller resource institution, so there are things that we share with our academic campus, and so entrusting my head coach to be able to manage in multiple directions is also a key for us to be successful in reaching our goals.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate that. Chris, different management styles, different expectations. Talk a little bit about your expectations from a head coach and how you formalize that with your basketball coach and others.
Yeah, through the years, one of the things that I've done, I think communication, as everybody said, really is the key between the relationship between a head coach and an athletic director. And, one of the unique things I think today and tomorrow that you're going to hear about is every athletic director is different. Everybody's leadership styles are different. I've done this type of panel probably about a dozen times in my career. And it's unique to hear the different styles of communication and relationships that ADs and head coaches have. And so that's the one thing that, coming in as a new head coach that you'll have to be ready for. And that's a lot of questions you ask during the interview process. One of the things I've learned, through the years, is I think it's good to make sure that you hold everybody accountable. They know their expectations. And that's what I've learned from head coaches. They just want to know in most cases where they stand. And so I did formalize that. And one of the things I do with our head coaches that I've learned is it's a lot better to talk to the head coaches as a group, hold them accountable to the same type of expectations. And so they hear the same message, whether it's the basketball coach or it's the golf coach, or it's the football coach or the lacrosse coach. And so we actually have set up defined expectations. I review those with the head coaches every August in a all head coaches meeting, from academic expectations, from competitive expectations. We talk a lot about running a program with integrity, which is absolutely important, making sure that our, student is just as important as the athlete. I talk a lot about alumni engagement and donor engagement, the importance of building meaningful relationships, in the community. And we got where I was at before, and then now we've kind of embraced this mantra as far as win campus, win the community, and win game day. And so expectations that really kind of surround those three key parts to what our mantra is. And then, of course, you're all going to have professional expectations. We want you to be lifelong, teachers and mentors for the student athletes, build character integrity. And I always use the phrase recruit, the best and the brightest. And, of course, we want you to retain and graduate your student athletes, be a community leader, be a model citizen. And I think every AD on this panel will tell you we want you to compete for and win championships. That's the most important thing that we do because it's how we get recognized as an athletic department and as a university. So, and then of course I'll have department overall expectations as well. throughout the entire department. It's not say specific just to the head coaches. And so it's formalized, and our coaches, I don't have to really talk about it very often because, they kind of know it. And I think they appreciate it, and, they enjoy, I guess, just knowing where they stand.
Now, do you have a document that you use with your coaches that you've, when you're going through this process, whether it's initially in the hiring or once they get on campus?
Yeah, I do. What's one of the first things we do? We'll do, we have a pretty extensive orientation to transition the head coach, and then of course their assistant coach and support staff once they arrive on campus. But part of that, sitting down and going through that expectations, with them right away. Because again, they want to know when they hit the ground running, what those expectations are. And so, and again, it sets the tone, I think, for our relationship and our communication. And it's been very successful for the past 11 years.
Great, thank you. We hear so much about fit and fit, the right place, the right time. Mike Capacio, you're at the Citadel. Talk a little bit about what that means where you are at your institution.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yeah, we are a military institution, and we're a little bit different here. And, the thing for us is the school revolves around the core more than it does athletics. Obviously, athletics is very important to us like everyone else, but when you're looking for an individual for a position like this, you have to be aware that really the commandant runs the athletic department, and everything runs through the core, which sometimes can be good and sometimes can be bad. We have a great relationship right now with the commandant. We work very closely together. He's helped us do a lot of good things. But in this particular situation, as all situations, what are you looking for with what is the area, what is the school that you're at? Us being a military school, we have a little bit different look. But other colleges have the same thing. I think the most important thing when you're looking at this fit nowadays is things have changed in the community. Things have changed in the coaching world. What you do in coaching right now is a really small part of it. Dealing with donors and some of the other things that have already been brought up. Communication is very important here, but not just to the upper level, to the lower level as well. You have to work with financial aid a little bit. You have to have a decent relationship with admissions and things like that, especially in a situation like this. But knowing what situation you're getting into is very important. And with ADs and with head coaches, a lot of times it's just, I want to get a head job, and that's just a good fit. That's not always a good situation.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. We've got a question coming in, excuse me, from Dwayne Killens about the head coach expectation. Will they change with the one-time transfer rule potentially coming into play? And as we all know, the transfer issue is becoming more and more prevalent at our institutions. But who would like to take on talking about that and what we need to, what our expectation is knowing that it's going to be becoming much more easy for our student athletes to transfer and play immediately?
I'll jump in on that, Mark, because I think it's really important, and especially when we're talking about basketball, it's part of what we have to manage even now without the one time. Our school, we lost our top 3 leading scorers this year to Miami, Cal, and Georgia. I think the reality is we can create an amazing culture. And I feel like at Stony Brook, that's where we invest on, transformational student athlete experience. But the reality is you're dealing with, the AAU coaches, the people in their ear. And far be it for me to hold a kid back. So I think what we're still going to do and what we should always do is go get the best kid, get the most talented kid, and hope that they want to stay and build. The one thing I've learned is throughout this is to make them realize that the big time can be right here, that legacy is important, the potential to have their banner hanging in the rafters, but it is something that is difficult. And as a head coach and as assistants, you've all in some way, shape, or form dealt with this, and you can question yourself. I can tell you, I hate losing kids. But if you're losing kids because they are looking to better themselves, what can you do? And I think, though, what all this means is you're constantly, and we all know this, we have to re-recruit our kids all the time. We have to love on them because it's great when they're here, but we have to continue to love on them and talk to them. And I think the relationships that you all build with them off of the court are more important than ever. I think that is something that is key. And so if even a student athlete decides, hey, they want to transfer, it's a conversation that can happen. And what we're witnessing in this day and age is Twitter, particularly in COVID. Kids were home. They're seeing what other student athletes are doing. And I think instead of, having the influence of the high school, AAU, social media, our influence on them, I think is really important. But if they know that you have their back, that you love them, you care about them, you're not going to keep a kid from transferring. But I think it allows for communication and conversation that can help them make the best informed decisions. But I think, Dwayne, it's a great question. It's something that we're all dealing with. And I think over the next year, while that legislation got pause was pressed on that, it is coming. And I think we're all going to have to realize that that's going to be a part of the reality, with even 800 or so kids on the men's side in the transfer portal right now, which is crazy.
Yeah, thank you, Shawn. Maybe turn to Tim Duncan to build upon that a little bit and talk about, expectation on building a family atmosphere within your program.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I was at 7 years at Division II, so they've always had the one-time transfer rule. So I think building the family atmosphere allows the student allows the student athlete the chance to feel like they're a part of something. And just as Shawn said, if you love them up, it's all about building relationships. And I don't think that coaches, and I tell our coaches, I don't think you need to look at it as all, our best kids are going to leave, because if you built the types of relationship during the recruiting process, you may get a kid back who you missed out on the first time around as well. So I think it goes both ways. And you're building great relationship and you're creating the atmosphere that the student athletes want to be there. There'll be some kids who want to go and get that Division I experience. The high major experience. I get it. I had a chance to do that myself, and it's awesome. But there'll be people who want to be a part of your experience as well. And if you create the right type of atmosphere where everyone feels connected and they have a one-on-one relationship with the coach, a unique individual relationship with the coach, just not coach the entire team, but a one-on-one management plan, I think that it will bode well for your program and you'll still have success.
Great. Thank you, Tim. We have another question from Rob Eschen. How specific do you get with on-court expectations of your head coach? For example, is it 20 wins per year? Is it top 4 in the conference, making the NCAAs? Let's ask Chris King to talk about that.
Yeah, I don't really get into the data of saying you got to be in the top 4 or top 3. You got to have 20 wins per year. I think, whether in my situation, I've come in here and with Coach Toole, he was chose 5th in the conference, ends up, number 2, ends up winning the conference tournament, and we would have been in the NCAA tournament. So if you look at that, he overachieved, right? But he really didn't. Can't get into the preseason polls or anything like that. But I think you have a framework, and I think the best ADs take a look at the resources that are provided to those coaches. If you've got the worst budget in the league, you can't say you're expecting them to finish in the top 4. So there's got to be a realistic expectation when you come to that competitive excellence category. And you have regular discussions with your coaches. What do you need? How do I support you so we can continue to elevate that program? When I hired the head coach at UTRGV, we were coming into a little bit of a negative, I would call, framework. And so, one of the things I said to him was, I'm probably not going to start evaluating you until year 3. And, sign into a 5-year contract, because I realized what the first 2 years were going to be like. And so we had to together roll up our sleeves and really kind of see what it was going to take to be able to win at UTRGV. And so that right off the bat built our relationship. And so, again, I think the pressure, these are different. They'll put pressure on you, 20 wins per year. At Alabama, to be honest with you, the expectations for competitive success are going to be different than they are at Robert Morris or University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. A lot of times you take a job at Alabama, you're going to have 4, maybe 5 years to be able to show that you're going to get those 20 wins per year. So I think it's just going to be a kind of a variable depending on the situation you're in and the institution you're at.
No, thanks, Chris. And that kind of segues into a question from Ronnie Hamilton, is specifically taking over a program that has not had recent success. What is a reasonable time frame in terms of expectation to turn it around to consistently win? And I'll throw that to Michelle to see if she'd like to comment on that.
We're actually in the process of really wanting to build and elevate our basketball program here at Longwood. And I think myself with my coaches, we have a long-term vision of where we'd like to go, but it really is a year-by-year assessment of where we are. What Chris said, an analysis of where's our resource investment, how can we start making some growth in specific areas that are going to support our goals. So I try to look at it year by year and set incremental goals and see how we're progressing towards those. But I think it would be unfair to just say, hey, we got to get here by this year or that's it. I think you have to take it year by year and assess where you're at and how you can grow.
Thank you. And to add to that, this follow-up question from Ronnie was, what have you seen new head coaches or first-year head coaches do to accelerate that process? And I'll ask that of Mike Capacio.
Well, I think it all starts with recruiting. Obviously, if you can get in and establish a recruiting base and get some talented young people into your program, and then be able to maintain that recruiting base and the consistency with that. Also, when you're coming into a program like that, building a winning attitude and things to promote what you feel can help get you to the next level. The one thing I think is very important is to let the head coach make his own decisions, move forward in the direction that he feels comfortable with. I don't think it's an AD's job to try to work any type of schemes. And within the basketball program, when you've hired that individual, they need to come in and they need to play the style of ball they want to play. They need to do the things they need to do to be successful. I think if you really look at it, a 5 or a 6 year window is pretty fair. We have not had much success in basketball. We here at the Citadel, we've had some moments, but we've only had 2 21 seasons. So our coach right now has been here 5 years. He's doing a good job. He's built up his recruiting base, but it takes time. It takes time, and people are impatient nowadays, as you know. But I think a 5 or 6 year period. But I always see, Mark, as recruiting has got to be the thing. You got to bring in quality kids, and you got to bring in kids that fit your system, and you have to bring in young people that can fit the school that you're at to be successful.
Oh, thanks, Mike. And I'll ask the other panelists if they'd like to add anything from their perspective, either on the time frame it takes to turn something around or things that they've seen that have been successful in accelerating that.
Mark, I'll say, I think it's really part of the conversation that you have with your coach, and that goes to managing the relationship that you have with your athletic director, that you have expectations that align. So often I think where things go sideways is when those expectations are not in alignment, because what you should develop is a plan. And I think it's hard to say, well, it's 4 or 5 years again, but if you have a plan for long-term sustained success, it might take 3 years, it might take 6, it could take 4, but I think that's part of the conversation that you have with an athletic director. What you want to do is you want to build a culture first that will allow the success to follow. And it's certainly recruiting is a huge part of it, but so are the other elements. How involved are you with, the academic success of your team? How are you with all of those other things, fundraising initiatives to get you what you need? So much of it is, and again, that goes to laying out what that plan is, and your athletic director being a part of that. I think then you have that expectation and understanding, and it's not on you. And I think it was said earlier, this is on us. I look at the success or lack thereof of any of our programs, but particularly men's and women's basketball, that's as much on me as it is on our head coach.
Yeah, appreciate that, Shawn. Tim, anything you'd like to add before we move on to our next question on those topics?
We can go to the next one. I think they hit everything that we need to hit.
Good. Appreciate that. So I think obviously right now, more than ever, with COVID-19 and what institutions across the country are struggling with is budget. And it doesn't matter right now if you're a Power 5 or Group of 5 or FCS or wherever you are, non-football playing, budget is a major issue in good times for most of us, but what we're all facing now. Talk about the role of your head coach in managing a budget within their program, but also looking for ways to create revenue. And I'll throw that to you, Mike, first, and then if some others would share their thoughts.
Yeah, and Mark, obviously trying times for everybody, no matter what level you're at. What we did is we implemented a 10% cut across the board on budgets and things like that, but working with coach, programs like us have to play guaranteed games, obviously. So can we get those guaranteed games to be close to home? And we did this year. So we're very fortunate in that. But just looking at your schedule, finishing up the schedule this year, number one, playing as close to home as we could. That's the number one thing. Save that cost. We also look at travel size. How many people are we going to take on the road? Are we going to be able to take players that are injured now on the road with us? Different types of things like that. What type of staff do we need to bring across the board? Our budgets are so tight anyways that we didn't really have to do very much. Obviously, fundraising is always a huge our institution, as it is, I'm sure, for many. Our booster club with basketball, fundraising across the board, that's going to become much more important to us. Obviously, it's a very difficult time to try to take that on as well, too. But just looking at those numbers and seeing where you can cut back as a team, and then working with the athletic director on that topic to try to come to an understanding where you're at. So I think we've been pretty fortunate this year. Like I said, playing to home and eliminating long trips, a lot of overnight trips, hotels and things like that is a key for us.
That's great. I appreciate that. And if any of our parents would like to add anything to that, please feel free to do so before we have a few more questions, and then we'll leave some time to open it up to the floor. Anyone want to add anything on the budget line?
Yeah, Mark, I can hit on that. The uniqueness of being an athletic director in your first year is you're assessing the entire situation. You're looking at all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and barriers of your program. Again, Robert Morris, our commitment, we have a strong commitment to basketball. We just built a brand new $50 million event center. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to go backwards, take one step forwards, a major step forwards, and then take two steps back. So you really want to kind of protect probably what is the strength of your program, which is your marquee program, men's and women's basketball. So one of the things that we've done is, as we've gone through this year, and we're looking at our finances, and being a mid-major private college, everything really kind of revolves around enrollment. And so sometimes I think a lot of us are facing that throughout the entire country. But one of the things that we're doing is we're going through cost containment measures, simulations. And so every head coach, we're doing them together. We're going through and looking at what we can do without for 1 year that doesn't truly affect our program. I don't want to cut the operating budgets. I don't want to cut staffing. And so those are things that we want to protect. And so is there other things that we can do without for a year, sweep and put aside, that allow us to kind of, get through this year? And then, if everything goes back to normal, they've got a little bit of surplus of money at the end. I think one of the other things I would say, and I know we talked about as a panel, is, the donor engagement, the alumni engagement is really crucial in this role for head coaches. No more, this is the best time right now for coaches to be out there engaging their donors and their alumni. There's a lot going on with athletic directors right now. I mean, from the finances to the COVID-19, just trying to figure out how to get, return to campus and return to the workouts. So anything that you can do as a coaching staff to engage those donors and those alumni, because it is a balancing act for us and all of our responsibilities. I would tell you, one of the things we did is we started an athletics advisory council. We have a pretty major donor for the men's basketball program, and I've asked him to co-chair that with me and really kind of get out there and solicit donations from those that are very passionate about the basketball programs, that allows us to be able to do a lot of the same things if we do have to cut back at some point. And so, again, when you make a commitment to basketball at the level that we're all doing at Division I, you have to you got to roll up your sleeves a little bit. And that's where that relationship that we talked about is ever so important between the AD and the head coach. And then also no different with the communication. Again, those relationships right now are more important than ever within that department.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And yeah, obviously fundraising is extremely important for all programs. And we have a number of ADs on this panel came up through the fundraising ranks, Mike, Shawn, myself, Tim. So Shawn, just asking you, what are your expectations of your head coach in the fundraising process?
I mean, it's really, really important. Again, so much that we have is invested in men's basketball and women's basketball, and it's an opportunity for us to really help the department, because we all need to invest in our men's and women's programs. So from the standpoint of it can't be just on the development staff. I think the coaches have got to be involved, and I think assistants being involved is really important, because you all have opportunities to help create meaningful relationships. But as a head coach, it's huge. So I shouldn't have to remind you to call a donor or send a text or invite someone to practice. That should be part of what you're thinking about. And it's hard when you're in the throes of the season or you're in the throes of preseason to think of those things. But our ability as ADs and as development professionals to secure those gifts, it's enhanced so much when there is a connection with the head coach. I think for all of us as ADs, it's great that donors trust us, believe in us, but they really, really want the head coach relationship. They want to feel like they're on the inside. There's something about that we can't provide, but you all as coaches can. And I think part of that is allowing them to get to know our kids, because so much of what we do is about our kids. I mean, we had a donor support our European trip last year, and that was really because of our head coach. And obviously we had a relationship, but if that relationship wasn't there, I don't know that we would have gotten that gift. And he went on to support a number of other initiatives. So I think it is absolutely huge. Now I would tell you this: it's easy to get sucked in the rabbit hole of the smaller donor, and you want to make everybody feel good. But the key is, how do you make those people feel good, but make sure you're focusing your attention on the higher end donors, because that's really where your time should be spent, where the true impact is.
No, that's a great point. I appreciate that as well. And I'll ask Michelle follow-up. With your head coach, do you expect them in the fundraising process to ever ask specifically for money, or just be part of the process through cultivation of those kind of things that Shawn's kind of outlined?
I think it depends on the relationship they've built with the donor. There have been instances where our coaches have built a really solid relationship, and with consultation with myself and our advancement team, have made an ask, and it has been very successful. I think the other important thing is coaches understanding they need to be available. There may be events that we're hosting, and even though it's in the midst of a season, we may need 5-10 minutes of their time to come over and say hello, because it does make an incredible impact in those donor cultivations and leading to hopefully big gifts.
Great, thank you. This question has come in from Rex Walters. How do the current investigations, the FBI, et cetera, impact your decision making in terms of the selection process? And I will throw that out to Tim Duncan.
I think it just reaffirms what our process already was, is to do due diligence. I think it will probably help the search firm business, because they have the ability to do background checks at a level with the speed and with the speed that we can do on a college campus. They just have better resources to be able to pull that off. So I think it will help their business in particular. But it just reinforces that you have to be diligent, and you have to understand who you're bringing in and the culture of your university. And if there's a question, I think it allows you to dive deeper, maybe with a few other candidates. But it depends on the tolerance of your institution. If your president or chancellor says we don't want anyone that's associated with the university who did that, then they're off the board. But if it was someone that wasn't implicated that may have been somewhere, I think that might be a different conversation. It just depends on where you are on your campus. The most important thing are those background checks. Check with compliance with the NCAA, I think is but to have a deep dive, search firms are really adept at that.
Great, thanks, Tim. And this one, I think, was put out from Search Clement to everyone, but we'll just ask this panel. Talk about next steps in creating a culture of unity. I think one of the, as Dr. Sanders said, one of the beautiful things about athletics is it just brings people together from all different backgrounds and unites us with a common goal and the ability to work together. Talk about next steps in creating that culture or strengthening that culture if you already have a good one. And I will ask that of Chris.
Yeah, it's you know, when I first arrived here, in full transparency, you know, at UTRSV, we had an extremely strong diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And it was top down from the university. It was part of the core values. And, you know, Robert Morris, I would tell you in athletics, university has a very strong diversity, equity, inclusion plan, but the athletic department really didn't and doesn't. And so that was one of our core values or one of our core priorities as we were going through this year. And so we have a lot of the framework ready to go and in place, and our coaches are involved in it. Our student athlete advisory committee has been involved in the implementation of a lot of different initiatives. And so, you know, we've been able to kind of jump on this right now very quickly. And so I've had a lot of conversations with our head coaches. Our head coaches have had conversations, very open and hard discussions with student athletes. We're getting ready to have one, a forum with our student athletes, with all the head coaches and myself, to have open communication, just to hear from them, understand, you know, how they're feeling right now. We have a department, just a department staff and coaches forum tomorrow night, and so very similar to what we'll do with the student athletes, but something we were looking to do in the fall. We were going to try to get through COVID-19, but that's something that is really kind of dropping a lot of everything we're doing right now and spending an awful time because again, we got to learn, we got to listen, and so those are things that you know, as an athletic director, I value and I value greatly. You know, whether it's in the hiring process, whether you know it's listening to our voices of our student athletes overall. And so to me, it's, I mean, again, it's a core value of every institution, and it should be a core value of every athletic program. It should be a core value of every corporation, every company. And so we have placed a very strong emphasis recently over the last 2 weeks in particular, of course.
Great, thanks. And then I'm going to turn to Tim Duncan. For many of you may have seen the video that he put out of himself, of an experience that he recently had and his message. And if you haven't, he can tell you where to find it. He's very active on social media. But Tim, could you please just talk about your recent and other experiences and how you're using that and your platform as the AD to make a change?
Yeah, just a quick synopsis. My wife and I were walking to the store in Newton, Mass. when I was there to move them here to New Orleans because I was here a year before them. And police pulled up and pulled a gun on me and asked where I was going and all that kind of stuff. It was a case of I fit the profile. So I wanted to utilize that experience to not only help my own children, and we immediately talked to them about doing those situations, but I also wanted to utilize it to help our student athletes. So we had a meeting with our executive team when that happened. Well, first, let me rewind. So it was 5 days before George Floyd was killed, and that was really the tipping point for America, but also for me when a friend told me, Tim, that could have been you. Process that for a little bit and think through why wasn't I as outraged as I should have been. So after I thought about that a little bit, I met with our executive team and told them I wanted to utilize that to talk to our student athletes. And to our student athletes, our executive team is really diverse. We have 2 African-American females, 2 white males, and 1 30-year-old Dominican kid who is really, really smart and talented. So we talked to them and asked, and we talked to the coaches and said, can we talk to all of the African-American student athletes first? So my 2 African-American administrators and I only spoke and met with our African-American student athletes because we wanted to give them a safe space to be able to listen, ask questions, share thoughts or emotions beyond there. And then the next night we had an open town hall with all of our student athletes, coaches, and staff. I shared the stories on both nights. We didn't bring up anything differently on either night. We just wanted to have customized experiences for them. And then the next day we put the video out. So in the video, I never thought I had a video to go viral, and I'm glad it's in a good way and not in some of the bad ways. But yeah, with over 20,000 hits on YouTube, you can Google Tim Duncan AD. Make sure you add the AD, or you'll get a lot of basketball highlights from the Spurs. But we wanted to utilize that in our platform to educate our student athletes, and it ended up being I've been reached out by people have reached out to me from all over the country, different media and different outlets, because I think the story was powerful to a lot of people because it's someone they know. Regular guy who has a job working athletics like many of you, and the media hasn't been able to portray me as a thug or put up a mug shot or anything of me to kind of discredit me as my character as a person, as they like to do a lot of times. So I think it resonated with people, and we've used that message. And as I've said a couple of times before, I think it was worth it, and I'll go through it again if it allows someone to learn, or it changes someone's perspective about racial profiling and policing and social injustice.
No, Tim, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for doing that. Took a lot of courage, personal courage, to record that video and put yourself out there. And you're you've made a huge impact, within your department and across the country. And as your longtime friend, you got my love and support, and anything I could do to help you there. So appreciate you sharing that. We're kind of winding down our time here. So I think there is one last question. I wanted to give every question a chance to be answered. So this one comes in from Andy at Dayton. When you're hiring a head coach with no head coach experience, are there any characteristics, or what type of characteristics do you look for in that process? And I'll throw that to Shawn, if we could just wrap up in maybe the next two or 3 minutes, Shawn, and then we'll move the panel forward.
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate that question, and I'll try to be brief with it, because I've hired 2 head coaches with no head coaching experience, and I think to me I'm looking for first and foremost that hunger. Someone took a chance on me as a first-time AD, and I was hungry, I was prepared. So I think that is first and foremost what I'm looking for, and I think someone that can come in with a plan. To me, it's what is your plan? Who have you learned from? So you've been around some successful programs, you've been around successful mentors, but you're ready to put your own spin on it. So to me, when I sit down and when I talk to someone, it's really I'm not one that needs the whole written 30-page pamphlet. I want to look in your eyes, and I want to see that hunger and see that conviction and hear your plan. Because again, like we talked about, you're the CEO of a very important part of our business. And, are you going to be someone that when you're sitting with a family, are they going to trust you and buy into what you are talking to them about? Is it who you are versus what you're selling? So to me, it's that connection that you make with the AD, with the president, whoever's involved in that decision process. But really, for me, it's the hunger. It's obviously paying your dues, having had success, been a part of successful programs, learned from successful head coaches, and now you're truly, the next step is to run your own program. That's for so many of us that are first-time ADs. That was really what someone had to give us a chance, and someone ultimately has to give you a chance. But those are the things that I look for.
Great. Now, thank you, Shawn. And with that, I think we have come to our allotted time for this panel. So I want to thank all of our panelists for taking time out of what is an extremely busy time and world for all of us, and sharing your thoughts and your experiences with the group. So thank you to our panelists, and thank you to all our coaches for being very active and participating with your questions. I hope we were able to get to everyone's, but just want to say my thanks, and looking forward to the rest of the program.